All right, let's do this. Creatine. You may have heard of creatine, good or bad. But what is creatine? It kind of sounds like when you keep saying it over and over, creatine, creatine. Like, is that what they gave to Captain America to kind of, I don't know, maybe, stay with me. Creatine is a compound that comes from amino acids, not used to make protein, much like taurine. It's found in foods like beef and pork and fish. Creatine is made in the cells of your body every single day, which is why it's found in animal sources like beef and pork and fish. So, obviously, for that reason, meat eaters, people who eat meat, omnivores like me, are going to have higher creatine levels in their body than people who are maybe vegan or vegetarian. And that's okay because you can supplement it. And even if you do eat meat, one of the reasons you may want to supplement it and not solely rely on animal sources is that to get the benefits of creatine, to get 5 milligrams a day, you would need to eat an enormous amount of meat, an enormous amount of protein, which is not only expensive, but calorically, that's going to be very high in calories. So even if you are like me, someone who's an omnivore, you eat meat, poultry, fish, whatever, occasionally you have red meat, I still supplement creatine. If you're a paleo, keto, carnivore person and you're just consuming meat all day, this may be less of an issue for you. That's okay too. So, creatine, it is not a steroid, it is a compound coming from amino acids. Taking creatine does not mean you're taking steroids. Only taking steroids means you're taking steroids. Or TRT in some cases. Another episode. Why am I even associating creatine with taking steroids? Because when creatine became popular in the early to mid 90s, there were many misconceptions about it. I myself can remember an instance where I was at school and a friend of mine, a young lady, had asked me, "What supplements do you take?" And I mentioned I was taking creatine at the time. She had told me, "You are taking steroids." I was not taking steroids. That's kind of crazy. She was a little wacky now that I think about it. You really can't get much further apart than steroids and creatine, being that one is like a hormone or a byproduct of testosterone, and the other is a byproduct of amino acids. So you're safe there. Moms, dads, if you find creatine in your teenager's drawer, it's, you know, not the white powder you're looking for. All right, so what does creatine do? Why is it talked about so much? First of all, creatine pulls water wherever it goes, predominantly in your muscles. It saturates your muscles with water, and creatine in your muscles is stored as what's called phosphocreatine. Think of it this way, it's like it's hydrating your muscles. The same way your body needs water and electrolytes to be hydrated and you feel your best, your muscles do better when they are saturated with phosphocreatine. The primary role of creatine is to create energy in your body. Specifically, this is where it helps athletes, people like me who lift weights or whatever you do, specifically energy production during high intensity exercise. This is like if you're doing hit cardio or you're lifting really heavy in the gym or you're boxing or you're going for a PR or maybe you're an athlete and it's all about performance. This is for you. Basically, when you are trying to push the envelope physically, creatine is there to assist, and it does. So, the way we create energy in our bodies is with ATP, which is a molecule, adenosine triphosphate. So, what creatine does is when ATP is used during exercise, for example, heavy lifting, something like that, you use the energy lifting something, and the ATP becomes what's called ADP because it loses a phosphate. ADP is adenosine diphosphate. The specific science isn't super important for you to know. It is important for you to know that ATP is changing to ADP when you're using energy, especially in high performance situations. And what creatine does for you, here's kind of the magic of this supplement. Creatine takes the ADP, transforms it back to ATP, kind of recharging it for you, leaving you with more energy and a steadier supply of energy throughout your workout, throughout your performance. So, in layman's terms, the more creatine you have in your muscles, the more you have in your body, the longer you can go, the harder you can go, the harder you can train, the more energy and explosiveness you have, which is pretty good. Now, creatine also helps your body synthesize glycogen from your muscles. Glycogen, we talked about a little bit last week too. Glycogen is your body's preferred way of storing carbohydrate in your muscles. Again, it's equating to more energy and more power. They're finding that supplementing with creatine can raise your levels by 20 to 40%, which is awesome, which is really notable for a supplement to do. The supplements also are almost always vegan. They generally do not come from animal sources. If that's something you're concerned with, you can get a creatine supplement and not have to worry about that. Creatine is also shown to help with recovery after a tough workout. Again, more reasons. You got all these reasons here. I mean, did you buy it yet? Now, you may know a bit now about the muscle building effects of creatine, but wait, there's more. So, not only is it helping you build your biceps or your glutes like me that I've been working on a lot lately, but you may be interested to know that creatine is also extremely beneficial for your brain. Your brain thrives on energy. Your brain is always hungry for energy. And creatine can help power your brain much the same way it helps power your muscles, kind of helping your brain thrive. This is improving brain function. I know I need this right now. I'm not sleeping enough. I got a new kid. They've been using intelligence tests and memory tests and all over cognition tests, and they're showing this from study to study. It is helping. The big thing right now, what it's doing for your noggin. Because it's helping with processing speeds in your brain, it may even help fight against cognitive decline, which of course is more of an issue as we age, for most of us. So again, I can't think of any aspect in life, whether it be stress or studying for a test or just trying to complete daily tasks, potentially needing to recall some things from memory, where creatine would not probably be a pretty huge benefit. So, what are my experiences with creatine? It was said for a while that in order to take creatine, like when it first came out, you had to do what was called loading creatine. That meant like instead of taking 5 milligrams a day, which I take now, which is a normal dose for most everyone, you had to take like 20 or 30 milligrams a day for like a couple of weeks or whatever it was. It led to a lot of bloating, a lot of discomfort, as it did with a lot of people. And I didn't take it for a while because I thought I didn't do well with it. I was wrong. It's now shown that the loading's unnecessary. Most people are good taking 5 milligrams a day, and you don't have to load it and get the gastrointestinal upset. Totally unnecessary. If you wanted performance results as soon as possible and you needed to load and saturate your muscles with creatine as soon as possible, I suppose that's something you could do. I just wouldn't recommend doing it because you don't need to do it. And within 3 weeks, your creatine levels are fully stored anyway. You don't need to do that. So, creatine and water retention. This is kind of a common misconception. Creatine does pull water wherever it goes. However, studies have shown the vast majority of the water is what's called intracellular, meaning it's doing exactly what you want if you were to supplement creatine. It is pulling water into your muscles, it is filling them, it is saturating them with creatine. It is not going to make you look puffy or bloated. That will not happen. If anything, by having your muscles a little bit more saturated, you may look leaner on creatine because you would be stretching out the fat and you may look more buff or toned or however you want to look. So if you are bloated from creatine, it is most likely because you went through that loading phase that I talked about. It is very rare that people respond to creatine in a bloating way. It is also very rare that someone is what they call like an anti-responder to creatine. A very, very small portion of people don't get benefits of creatine. The vast majority do. The other thing with creatine that's really, really powerful and why we're talking about it on the show is creatine is probably the most extensively studied supplement there is. The research is totally conclusive in that creatine is the real deal. It really helps. Is it like taking something crazy like a weight loss drug like Ozempic or whatever the hell's out there today, or taking steroids? Of course not. This is a healthy thing. This is a byproduct of an amino acid. But the fact that they show this thing works is tremendous in its own right. The only things that I can think of that are as well studied and shown to enhance performance as much as creatine is you got like whey protein, caffeine, and maybe omega 3 fish oils, omega 3 fatty acids. So I don't think you can do much better than creatine in terms of the risk, very little to none, other than a tummy ache, versus the reward, big muscles. There was one study with creatine and hair loss showing that it increased DHT. Um, Creatine doesn't affect androgen levels, and this has not been replicated in any other studies. So if you're worried about losing your hair with creatine, you may have read that. I don't really think you have to worry about that. So I just started taking creatine again after my most recent cut. I have a new baby. I have a 2 year old. I work all day. I work out. I could use the help of creatine for my body and for my mind. At the time of this recording, I've been taking creatine now for a little over a week since I just started again. You don't have to cycle on and off. I'm taking it now for I think 9 days, and I already see a difference in the volume of my muscles. I think I'm gonna continue to get a little bit stronger. I'm kinda seeing some lifts ticking up, but I do see a difference already. But again, until you get to that 3-week mark, you're really not fully saturated in terms of the creatinine levels in your muscles. I started taking creatine again once I went back into maintenance mode after my most recent fat loss phase, which we're gonna talk about next. And I also want to share my future results with you with creatine as well. So whether it be the 1 month, the 2 month, the 3 month, the 6 month mark, I want to share with you. This is my anecdotal evidence. This is my experience with creatine. This is what it did for me. This is what it might do for you, I hope. So, which creatine should you buy? You do not need to spend a lot of money on creatine. I always opt for Thorne supplements. I will post a link in the description because they're a higher quality. They're better tested. I trust them. I believe in them. And even with Thorne, I think you're paying like it turns out to be something like $14 a month for the supply. It's still a very cheap supplement. So in that regard, again, much like taurine last week, this is not a big investment to try taking creatine and see what it does for you. But like anything, you have to be your own best advocate. You always talk to a doctor or whatever when you start something new and keep an eye on it. Creatine monohydrate is absolutely fine in terms of which creatine to buy. That's the standard. Creatine monohydrate is fine. Um, do not buy any creatine that is a fancy name creatine, or especially if it says does not cause water retention. The whole point of taking creatine is you want water retention. What you do not want is not to have the water pulled into the muscles. So if they're saying it doesn't cause water retention, that's for two reasons. One, they're lying to you, or two, it just doesn't work. So it's probably not creatine. Or maybe it's poor advertising. Either way, you want creatine that works. Let me know in the comments your experiences with creatine. Are you taking it? Will you take it? And what other supplements do you want to hear more about?